to move forward. So moving on to my next point, I want to talk a little bit about the work I'm doing right now in Lebanon. The need to work and talk and think about responses to the Syrian crisis, and in particularly the massive refugee movements that are almost unparalleled, and that are something that we haven't dealt with as an international community. There's a need to do something, right? And so I think we all feel that need to do something. And I got involved in this project, and kind of one of the questions that has always mattered for me is, why is education the right way to do this? And in some ways, I think I'm particularly interested in education-based interventions into the Syrian crisis because I'm an educator, right? Because I'm a university teacher, and I think education matters, and I think it transforms people's lives and potentials, right? But at the same time, I think choosing to do an educational intervention matters in response to the Syrian crisis, because we can see that there are particular utilities that educational approaches can give in order to be able to really make a change and try to support positive social change to come out of such a horrendous crisis. So I'm going to bring back up my slides. The particular project I'm working on is focused in Lebanon. And Lebanon, along with Turkey, has really borne the brunt of the neighboring countries of Syria in terms of refugee arrivals, to say nothing of the destruction that's happened inside Syria. And the situation in Lebanon today is that 1 in 3 people in Lebanon is either a Syrian or a Palestinian refugee. That's been approximately 1.5 million new arrivals in a country of 4 million prior. So basically a huge, huge increase in people arriving. And it's absolutely changed the social landscape. Whereas there had always been migration and circulation between these two countries, in the context of the current crisis, it's escalated to a huge extent. And I have to say, all parties are not prepared to manage it. There are big issues of infrastructure and of kind of social capacity and economic stability that are making this fundamentally welcoming act of letting in so many people who are fleeing violence and in search of a safe place to be, but it's caused massive trickle-down effects to the entirety of Lebanese society. And it's particularly an issue because refugees are barred from most legal employment. They face a high cost of living, and they face high barriers to all sorts of education. And so given the map that I've got up there, I actually don't think it's a terribly communicative map, because what it shows is that the entire country is red being the most dense refugees. I think it kind of shows the fact that people are out of ideas about how to color, about how to make a map about this. So the question for us is about, why is higher education the right answer? And some of this is about the fact that that Syrian refugee populations are already fairly well educated, and so higher education is what's available. But it's also because higher education leads people to be able to really make some significant changes in their lives. It helps people move forward and credential themselves for career purposes. And so that's one side of the equation, right, is why we should engage in higher education. But then the other side of the equation is, why are we teaching about community mobilization? And the reason for that is that there's strong civil society in Lebanon, and whereas the Syrian civil society was more suppressed, at the same time, there was the voluntary sector that people were engaged in. So there was a lot of people who want to do this sort of community work. And as along with social traditions of mutual care and charity. And so what it struck us is that people wanted to be able to help their communities. People wanted to be able to start projects in this new context and really break down and do something new. But at the same time, they didn't have the tools for it. They didn't have material resources, and they didn't have conceptual resources for working in this new space. And so what we settled on in developing this program is one that would do two things. One is it would meet the need for education by helping people earn transferable credits so they could work on a university education, which we know is really important to personal outcomes. And that also we'd create organizers who would be able to go out and work in communities and make changes. And that's really what we wanted to do. And so we think that this project is going to make changes in a couple of areas. We think it will help deal with some of the problems having to do with access to legal work for refugees. We think having a mixed student population of Syrians, Palestinians, Lebanese, and others will help build community contacts among different communities and help people work together. We think that we can, in a small project like this, be kind of flexible about people missing papers, which is a major issue. And we also think that we can address some of the other access issues through particular interventions. This project is still under development. We haven't launched it yet, and it's a big undertaking, but I think at the same time, we need to think largely and creatively if we're working on refugee issues about what education can do and why it is able to make changes. And so what I think the CMIC project does that is so important is that it is able to take these ideas about why education can make a difference and why education in this area can make a difference and can put them into practice. And that's what I'm really excited and looking forward to in this. So I want to thank you